Welcome, Guy Riese, CEO and founder of Uplearn. Great to have you on the Blackfinch Ventures Fearless Founder Series.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we invested in your company, I think, through our EIS and our VCT product. I think it was this year, actually, back in March. But tell us a bit about Uplearn. Tell us what it does to help secondary school students all around the country.
Yeah, so Uplearn's an online learning company. We're using cognitive science and AI to basically provide students with everything that they could need to prepare for and get an A star in their exams or their money back. So our goal is to provide the most effective learning experience possible for each of the courses and curriculums that we cover, and then to distribute our curriculums, our courses to every student taking those qualifications.
And that's an amazing promise. We'll come to that a bit more later on. But before we dive into the secret sauce, I don't think this is your first startup. And I remember when I did the due diligence, when I spoke to many of your colleagues and your team in the company, one of them described you as a former child genius. Hopefully the genius has continued to move through as you've grown up. But tell us a bit about your background. We like it when there's like a bit of track record there in the founders. Tell us about what you've been up to in your history of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I don't think I love the word genius, but it's a funny term to use because I think a lot of actually my experience has been quite learned and developed over time. And essentially the background is when I was younger, I was a bit of a computer geek and started playing games and started to try and figure out how computers worked and discovered the coding that operates behind the scenes and started coding when I was about 12. And my experiences with fixing computers and fixing websites led to me starting an internet hosting company, which I started when I was 13, selling website hosting and domain name registration services. And I was figuring things out as I went along. I really knew very little getting into that, but learned a lot about how websites work and how to provide a really high quality web hosting service, as well as run a business effectively. So I grew that over several years. It took off quite a bit, and we had about 5,000 customers when I sold it while I was at university. Kind of saw the impending shift to cloud hosting. What I was doing back then, which was kind of like 2007 onwards, was sort of more server-based technologies. But yeah, and so it's a lot of technical expertise there. But sort of the seed for Uplearn actually happened when I was taking A levels myself at school. So in the last 2 years of my time at school, doing those A, went into that second last year and fell ill with glandular fever. Don't know if you know the story. I can recount it a bit, but yeah, I missed a whole first term and fell incredibly far behind, and so my school wanted me to drop down a year, and I obviously didn't want to do that. Didn't want to lose my friendship groups. So I thought, okay, like I've managed to figure some things out with this web hosting business. Let me see if I can figure some things out with learning that might help me to catch up quickly. So I typed into Google, how do you learn faster? Came across mostly quite a lot of rubbish, but found this thing talking about cognitive science and this research that's been done over many years into how memory works and how you actually understand things and how you can sort of basically maximize your retention of information or increase the speed at which you get it. And there's a lot of insights from that have been applied by people called memory champions who compete in these competitions, like memorizing a whole deck of cards in
Really?
and things like that. But what I found is that there were people applying research from this field to academic learning at university or at school, techniques like retrieval practice, spaced repetition, and interleave learning. And so these were approaches that were completely different from anything that I'd used when I was studying at school. but I kind of had nothing to lose. So I took an extra 2 weeks off school to try applying these techniques, and came back to school after that. We had a test for the new term. The first one was in chemistry, and my teacher was like, don't worry, Guy, we just need to kind of see where you're at. Took this test, and to her surprise and my surprise, I'd gone from being sort of a below average student to the top mark in the
Really?
class.
Wow.
And that sort of shifted my whole perspective on education. I'd suddenly gone from being this very below average student to above the natural geniuses in the class in terms of what I was able to get, and realized that sort of when it comes to academic learning, it's more about it's less about your innate genius and more about how you are learning, and there are more effective ways to learn than others. So yeah, sort of away from there, I used those techniques to get straight A stars and into a top university, and that was the seed for Uplearn. But yeah,
Amazing story. And we always love it when founders have a real personal kind of passion behind the products that they develop. But I'm still reeling from the concept of you being at university while all your mates are turning up late to the lectures, having been out drinking the night before, and you're selling your first company. But great to have you in the portfolio, that's for sure. So just to sort of summarize then for Uplearn, because you've got that incredible guarantee, as you say, and we've looked into all the numbers. That's why we invested. It really is true. It does really help. How would you describe the secret sauce that lets you really be able to back your promise that if you take a full course on Uplearn, then the odds are you're going to get an AOA star? How does that secret sauce look today?
yeah. The core insight really came from my personal experience applying this research in cognitive science. Back when I was doing it, it was just sort of a handful of things, a handful of different insights that I'd read about and was applying to my studies myself. And I'd been able to basically apply that to any body of knowledge that I needed to understand, retain information from, be able to apply in an exam setting. But so few students manage to figure that stuff out for themselves. Most students go through our entire education system with not that much to show for it at the end of it. And so I thought, okay, what if I take this research, double down on it, find out what else there is out there, and then build it into a system that ensures that any student who's learning through this system, this software system, is going to be learning their subject and every concept in it in the most effective way at sort of like all moments in that. So kind of expanded from like a handful of cognitive science things to probably over 200 insights, and built over time a team of people who are probably one of the best teams in the world at applying this research and extending upon this research to build effective learning sequences. So one or two examples of that. One of them is just the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, which is something linked to spaced repetition. And basically, you can roughly predict the rate that someone's going to forget information after learning it, based on how frequently you get them or they retrieve that information in the future. So how many times, and the sort of the gaps, the time intervals between those times. And so we were able to essentially build that in as one of into the software of the system, so that for every concept that you learn on Uplearn, you go back to revise it at the optimal time, like not too soon, not too late, makes your whole experience learning something and revising something more efficient.
And it's this, I've seen it myself when we did the due diligence on the investment, the process, isn't it, of how you've stitched that all together in a world-leading approach to pulling the content and in the right way with the right duration and everything else is really quite remarkable, and it really works. And you're saying, I know you're moving a bit earlier in the educational landscape now with the plans hopefully to launch GCSE. Do you want to tell us a bit about how that's going and where you've got to?
Yeah, so over the years, we started with one subject at A-level. We've expanded now to cover 6 different subjects, including sort of STEM, by having 3 sciences and maths covered, which makes us really useful to a lot of students taking A-levels. And now we're doing quite a natural expansion down into GCSEs. So A levels covers the last 2 years of education. GCSEs is kind of like another 2 to 3 years below that. The way we're building those products as well will mean that students even younger than that, probably from age 11, 12 upwards, will be able to potentially use these products to learn their subjects. So yeah, at the moment we're working on our expansion into GCSEs, primarily with the 3 sciences first.
No, that's great to hear. And one of the things we loved about it is that if you get someone early on, as you say, young as 11 or 12, and they're using your system, then the chances are they're going to continue to use it if it works brilliantly well, which it seems to, all the way through. They do A level and everything else. So it just kind of works in lots of different ways. But how about geographical expansion? Are there any challenges taking this to another country? I remember you were saying when we talked to you when we were investing that, maths is maths and things like that. Physics is physics. So yeah, do you have any plans to go beyond the UK or any challenges in doing that?
Yeah, in the long run, we want to expand internationally. I can't speak to the specific plans, but we are looking into different avenues for that. Essentially, the sciences and maths are quite similar curriculums in different countries. There's specific things to tweak for different geographies, but ultimately, if you're learning physics, if you're learning maths, if you're learning chemistry, and so on, it's similar. So that's part of the reason that we've focused on expanding that down into young years first, and then that is a kind of sequence that we can expand geographically with too.
And you've got the formula, haven't you? So having done it once before, it's going to make it a lot easier. Now, you're one of the later stage companies in our portfolio because we typically invest in sort of seed stage, pre-series A stage. So it's been quite interesting for us to see your progress. And one of the things that we've been really blown away by is your ability to kind of meet or exceed your projections financially, which is something that nearly all of our companies tend to struggle with. Do you have any secret for success there? I mean, what I'm talking about here is being able to say, look, we think we're going to do this, and actually either achieving that or doing better than that.
Yeah, I think maybe in defense of the other companies that might struggle with this at earlier stages, I think it is a big part to do with the stage. Specifically, we have now a few years of data that really informs our revenue projections. I think in terms of cost projections, that is a bit easier. You should be able to essentially know who's on your payroll, and you can model that out, and you can model out all of the different cost elements of your cost structure to predict how that's going to be over time. The other constraint as an earlier stage company is it is difficult to keep those up to date. And obviously if your models, if what you're actually actioning changes from your model because things change quickly in early stage companies, then the model comes out of date, becomes accurate because of that reason. And so that's a bit difficult. But essentially, at the end of the day, what we've done to be able to do this successfully is carefully model out those costs, and then do some clever things on our revenue forecasting. Specifically, I think we've consciously combined past data up to the limit of how useful and accurate that can be, and then added in some expert judgment to tweak things in a proactive way, up or down. And that's allowed us to do the revenue forecasting well. And if you put those two things together, you have your cash flow forecasts and your P&L forecasts and so on. So yeah.
You make it sound so easy. We invested in March 2023, and September for you is obviously the biggest time of the year because people are starting their new courses and they're thinking, I want to start, getting things on track for achieving high grades. Tell us about how you managed to do this September, because I know that you sort of smashed your targets, but how did you manage to do just so well in this September just gone?
Yeah, one of the things we've been working on is our expansion into schools. And so since we have a reasonable suite of subjects, schools have been able to talk to us about rolling it out to an entire year group or 2-year groups of students. As we have done that, we've seen first individual classes be really successful with using Uplearn, and then whole departments, and then whole schools. And most recently, we've also seen multi-academy trusts and groups of schools finding that the benefits they're seeing on smaller scales in different pockets of the group are really strong, and they want to make UpLearn part of the practice across a whole group of schools. And so we've seen really strong traction. A lot of those schools are interested in getting on UpLearn early on in the school year, so that the students can have the maximum benefit across their time at the school. And so we had a really strong September where we were able to exceed our forecast, and actually, I guess to your point, we've been able to pretty much consistently hit or exceed our revenue forecasts for probably more than 12 months now. So yeah.
No, it's great news, and great for our investors too. And it's funny because what we tend to say when I stand up on stage and talk to investors and advisors, I tell a story about how we invest in earlier stage companies, and then we diversify across stage. So we invest in some later stage ones, and they don't grow as fast, but it's they're more steady. But in your case, actually, you've been bucking that trend quite nicely. So well done for that. Now, so that's super exciting to see. But for you, just casting your mind a bit further ahead, 5-10 years into the future, a bit of horizon scanning. Where would you like UpLearn to be? What's the future look like, do you think, for your company?
Yeah, so for the courses that we've covered, we are one of the most effective ways to learn your, say, A-level physics, A-level maths. And that's really amazing. But we do want to ultimately cover every level of education down to, when you start studying maybe like 4 or 5 years old, all the way through to early years of university and professional qualifications as well. And ultimately, if we could cover whole domains of knowledge from the very beginning of numeracy and literacy through to university level of mastery of these domains, we can actually potentially make it so that you can go from no knowledge of a domain to the cutting edge, really, or like the end of that domain that humans know in a fraction of the time that it takes today. And if we can do that for students all around the world in all sorts of geographies, then maybe we can actually sort of like 10x the standard of education and the rate that people can learn and then contribute to society and human progress. So for me, we're really just at the beginning of what UpLearn could do over time, and I'm really excited to drive us there.
It's a very exciting vision, as you say. Maybe geniuses are learnt, not born, after all. So, well, Guy, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the Blackfinch Ventures Fearless Founders Series. Really look forward to working with you closely in the years to come, and hopefully we'll get a great result for everyone. Thanks a lot for joining the show.
Thanks, Reuben. Pleasure to be here.